Hello, everyone. I'm Miriam Bale, and I'm the artistic director of Indie Memphis. And we're so happy to welcome you to our Movie Club Q&A tonight for our featured film, She Dies Tomorrow. I want to give a thanks to Neon for helping us organize this event. And I want to also thank our co-sponsors of the film, Malco. And I can announce that the film at the Summer Malco Drive-In has just been extended another week. So you have until August 20th through August 20th at this point to see this beautiful film, She Dies Tomorrow, on the big screen outdoors. And it's also available on various other platforms if you're not in Memphis. And you can check our site or the She Dies Tomorrow site. I also want to give a quick shout out to an event we're doing next week. It's the Shoot and Splice. It's a case study of pilot curves with Sky Blair, and that's at 7 p.m. on August 20th, and that should be great. So I'm about to introduce our very special guest, and just as a quick heads up, once we get to the Q&A portion, please put your questions in the Q&A box, and then they will, I'll read them out loud. If you're watching on YouTube or Ventive, you can put your comment in through a comment. And now it is my great pleasure to bring in our guest today, the director of She Dies Tomorrow, Amy Seimeitz. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
So
hello.
Nice to see you.
So good to see you. We already said this, but I'm so good to see your face.
Now we can say it for an audience. Yeah. It's really nice to see your face, and you're there in the setting of She Dies Tomorrow, your own
it's
house.
True.
So.
Yeah. It's very strange. Floors. Yeah. It's strange. I think it's stranger for audiences than it is for me, but I love it. So this is where Kate goes up into the backyard. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit. So I'll give a quick background, and also as a way of asking my first question. You directed a film 7 years ago, Sun Don't Shine, with some of the same cast, Kentucker Audley and Caitlin Scheel, and that was a very low budget genre, beautiful film. And then since then, you've gone on to direct television with Atlanta, and of course the Girlfriend Experience, which you've co-created, and you've also acted in films like Pet Sematary and Alien, and these big budget films and these big budget TV shows. And yet for this film, you decided to kind of go small again, do something on a small, an intimate scale. and with some of the same cast that you worked with in Sun Don't Shine. Can you tell me a little bit about that decision, like both from a production standpoint and artistically?
I mean, sure. I mean, I just got off the phone with, not now, but last night I talked to David Lowery, and he had watched my film, and he was just like, like, thank God, like, you're doing the same thing that I love doing, which is this. There's a compulsive element to, there's this lovely thing of having the tools when you have the experience and you have the opportunity. It's great to have that. But like, he made a ghost story, and there was just like this undying sort of want to like to make something that's just your own and not have to answer questions to people. And both of us are like, there's benefits to both sides of it, but you don't, it takes a long time to develop, and television shows for myself, and then for him, or bigger movies. And there's still an undying love for independent cinema in like not having to answer to anyone and having it be your own, and coming back to that is such a luxury after you've worked in these things where you do have to answer you have to justify your vision in some way, in so many words. And for me, it's like, sometimes I just want to get at something where words have boundaries for me. They can't scratch at exactly what I'm trying to get at. And I constantly feel like I'm trying to explain to executives, like, and they're doing their job properly. It's not their fault. It's just, I think words have boundaries that expression can like sort of break through in a way of like, I don't know how to explain it. Let me just show you, which independent film is the way to show somebody,
And I'm imagining also to find it a little bit through, I mean, so that totally makes sense, where you're not constantly pitching things, and it's not strictly through script, where you're able to find it through the camera and through experimentation. Was there some of that on this film?
Right. And yeah. And with people that you trust, like Kate,
Yeah.
like, I mean, I remember the day because I was like, through exercise, sort of like maintaining my own anxiety, and I was on a run, and it just wasn't working anymore. Like my runs, I was just like running like God knows how many miles a day or whatever to like maintain. And I just like stopped running, and I just like called Jake Keitel, my cinematographer, and I was just like, I have to make something like development, like the running and the development. And, I was just like, I have to start shooting something. And he was like, great. And he's so game. And then the next phone call was to Caitlin Scheel. And I was like, can you just do this with me? And she was like, yep. Because I think we all were going through some sort of stasis. This is before quarantine, but this is 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was like some sort of like, it's great, we're making money, but like, where is the the interesting thing that we're getting to do, And again, I don't want to take away from the executives and all these. They're doing their job, they're making sure people make money. And they're making sure audiences get the film, like the content that they want. It just takes so long,
Yeah.
So so when I made that phone call, it was very much like, can we just like make this,
That's amazing. So there was a lot of, so did you have a full script going in, or did that come through editing, or?
No, at first I really just wanted to explore the idea that Kate was overwhelmed with the idea that she was going to die. And I didn't want it to be about what, like that it's like, oh, I hear something.
Oh, can you hear in the background?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought the headphones would help. Okay, I'm going to mute. There's a neighbor.
Okay. Oh, they sound fun. Um, Miriam, you just made my next movie. But like, but anyways, so I wanted to see like Your Neighbors. I wanted to see Kate exploring this aspect of what it would seem like if she was consumed with the idea she was going to die tomorrow with no explanation, you know, if what it would be like if she just had to explain to people, I'm going to die tomorrow. And they're like, no, you're not. And she was like, no, I really am. And like understanding that tension, but also how she just like her acceptance of that idea of like, no, it's true for me. So that's where it started. And then I shot these scenes with Kate around my house and with Jane Addams coming in and disbelieving her. And she was just so magnificent that I was like, oh, I get the movie right now. I get it. Like now Jane has to like go through this experience, because in real life, Jane was one of my confidants through my own anxiety.
So obviously through finding that form and through making it like contagious, this anxiety, you made the film of COVID, the film of right now, which is so completely true. But I feel like there's so many ways this is the film for right now. Like not only like, I mean, obviously there's those themes of a contagious disease, and I'm so interested in you're getting into some of the like biological imagery, and we'd love to ask about that. But for me, that this film was also seeing this film at the beginning. You were supposed to premiere at South by Southwest, which is the first festival that was really completely canceled, the first major festival, and so you didn't get that premiere. But watching it around that time, and then again, once we've been in this for a while, I've had so many experiences with it. Like obviously first it was just like, oh my God, Amy is a visionary. How is she just ahead of what's happening in the world? And this
well, I am, Miriam.
You are though. You're like one of these people who like people will like recommend a book to me, and I'm like, okay, but if you recommend something, it's like, you know, like somehow you just are tuned into something. And
this is how tuned I am. I'm gonna smoke while we have this, because that's how tuned in I am.
You can deflect, but it's totally true. And it's but then the next experience was that that, you know, I feel like what is the other thing is that it was just, I was getting into this feeling of where films were, you know, like just couldn't meet the emotional experience I was going through. It felt like when Amy says like movies that they're an hour and a half, like it's just not enough. Like all movies were just an hour and a half. And then I saw this movie and it was like, oh, this is resonating. This is resonating with the intensity that we're going through. But then the other thing for me was like just the social, the awkward, the humor of like how awkward, the awkward interactions, like obviously with Jane, even just like starting it right away when she can't hear her, and that kind of the humor of that, but then especially going into like the dinner party and that kind of stuff. And so I wonder how you found the humor. I mean, obviously Jane is hilarious, and did at what point did you realize you were kind of making a comedy, or was that always there?
It was always there. I mean, it was always there because like Kate and I like to say, and Jay Keitel too, is that Sun Don't Shine is a secret comedy, you know?
Definitely.
Yeah. That like once you get through the trauma of it, that like trauma you can laugh at in retrospect, right? And at least that's my experience, is like once you get through the throes of like grief and whatever myriad of emotions that you're going to go through things, you can look back and like laugh, you know, of the craziness of it. And so that was like how we approach everything, or that they know I approach everything. And so how lucky am I that I like know people that understand what I'm going for, you know, in a way, but also, yeah, the movie's an hour and a half. Like it's both like, that's too much time, and like also it's not enough time, you know? It's like what we're going through. It's like it's too much time and not enough. So like what is time at this point? You know, like I could watch a movie, but then like I have another how many hours like left, or you know, or that's too much time because I could be like consuming it with something else, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I were still reviewing. I feel like I would take that as like a form of certain films. They're just like, it's an hour and a half. It's an hour and 45 minutes. That's it. Not much more to say. But I want to ask, actually, I want to backtrack to what you were saying about finding the film and experimenting. I want to call out an interesting cameo in the film. James Benning, the experimental filmmaker, makes an appearance. Can you tell me about that cameo?
Yeah, I met him a long time ago when I was like in my early 20s, and his like introduction to me, nobody like warned me. He saw me like in actually Jay Keitel's thesis film, my cinematographer's thesis film, because he went to Cal Arts. And he came up to me and he was just like, he told me about watching this cow die. He just like abruptly came up to me and he was like, I hit this cow by accident, and I pulled over the side of the road, and I felt so like terrible about it. But I sat there with her. She was a female. I made sure she was a female, but I sat there with her and I held her head until she died. And I watched like the life like go out of her eyes. And then he walked away. And and I was like, who the fuck is that? And then somebody was like, it's James Benning. And I was like, oh yeah, because I had been familiar with his films. And then he wrote a film that I was in. He was like, you're my favorite actress. Like, I just want to write something for you. So, and if you know his films, that's like a very complimentary thing, because he makes things about clouds and trains. Yes. Yeah.
So yours, yeah, to be in that company as a person is an incredible honor.
And he's been my dear friend. He's actually brought me on to like show my films in his classes. And what's hilarious is like I show my movie and he's like, why did you sell out? And he'll like yell, and his students, they're like disciples in this way. and they'll like attack me too, and they're like, why is this so, and like with Sun Don't Shine, which is like so not the commercial, and then at the end he's like, I love you, like, and he gives me a hug, and his like students are like, I don't even understand how to process, but like I just love how we're able to have this film conversation in a combative way while still like loving each other. So I was like, it's you. And he was like, okay, show me where to show up. Yeah.
That's that's amazing that he says Sun Don't Shine is a sellout. Like, it's not like the girlfriend experience. I'm having heart trouble. I'm still on the cow. Like, all of that is a lot to take in.
But that's why he had to be in it, because he's this sort of like Neil Young presence, but like also is so combative, and like he feels sort of impenetrable. And so I was like, it's him at the end that she like sees and or talks to, because there's something impenetrable about him and his being, like in general, like even filmmaking wise, or just a being that like feels so outside of everything that it's like he didn't even know the apocalypse was happening. He's like, I'll do the leather work for you, you know.
Amazing. Yeah, that totally, he's perfect for that. And it also feels like it goes into a acknowledgement of like an element of your style, even if your films are within the genre, or even like like with the Girlfriend Experience, the difference between even like yours and Lodge Kerrigan's style. Like, you know, there's like just the cuts and the edits and the like blur, you know, as a shorthand. I feel like that's always in your films. I think in a really interesting way. Do you feel like, have you done like experimental films? Do you have a background in that, or have you always done narrative?
I wanted to only do experimental or maybe self-proclaimed. I don't think you know what you're doing when you're in your 20s. So like, even if you self-proclaim you're doing experimental, you have no idea, you know, like, cause you're,
Right.
if you're it, like, cause you're such a product of your upbringing, right? Like, it's like, even if you're doing purely experimental, like you're going to have to go through a process of like, of two paths of whether you're going to break from like pop culture and like totally try to deconstruct your brain and go off and just make total experimental films, or just embrace that you're just a product of society in some way, you know. So for me it was like, I don't want to embrace either. I wanted to like take from everyone in a way.
But when you get that, I mean, that sweet spot is so great, and it's obviously like becoming, you know, it's your style, and that's and I want to ask something else about the girlfriend experience. That I was I was amazed at how, I shouldn't have been amazed, but Harmony Korine was so good in your season 2. He was so perfectly cast. You're obviously a genius at casting, and he's so good. But I also started wondering, like, you know, working with Kate, working with Ken Tucker. Kate's not really a director, but she's a filmmaker. Ken Tucker is a director. Ken Tucker, Memphian. Let me give a shout out to Ken Tucker's Memphis roots. But you, is there any kind of, this is a question I am just kind of feeling out, but is there any kind of like shorthand when you're working with directors who are also actors? Is there some kind of interesting thing that happens in that?
Yeah, I mean, most of the people that I'm working with, like Kate, should be directing. I always say this about like, I say this about like every woman that like is so brilliant. I'm just like, you're such a storyteller. Like, go direct, you know. And it takes audacity. But in the same way as Jane, like 100 miles a minute, she comes up with a story. And I'm like, let's like latch onto one, babe. You know, because that's like how it, like, you have to latch onto one. But everyone in their own right in this movie is their own storyteller. I mean, Chris Messina has directed, and right. Katie Aselton, Tunde, I directed, but he's his own storyteller and as a musician. Jennifer Kim, I love so much, and she should be telling her own stories. And then like just like, and then Adam Wingard is in there because he owed me a favor. But and James Benning did too. But like, you know, it's really great to work with storytellers. Just and I have no ego about that. Like, I love allowing them to have their own space, and they love that I'm giving them words to say. And sometimes they'll fight the words I say or I've written for them. They always like sort of magically come back to the sentiment, and that's all I ever wanted, you know.
I could totally see that. It goes back to the finding it and that trust in the story, like in the action, instead of just, oh, that's really interesting. I want to ask you about the sound, because the sound is so much in this film, and it's so interesting, and that's something that I feel like is like evolved so much in your style, like some of the sound used. And I was noticing it's very like, there are a lot. I mean, I just want to ask you generally about it, but I also feel like there was a almost like a subconscious, like Lynchian David, like the sort of suburb kind of thing with the birds and then with the lights, and like, but it produces this like blue velvet kind of horror of houses and suburbs and lawns and just through the bugs and the birds. But can you talk to me a little bit about developing the sound design?
Sure. I have to give credit to Mary Ellen Porto, who designed my second season as well. And she just like immediately, I sent her an email when I was like, can you come on to this tiny movie? Will you do this for me? And she was like, I love you. I love like, and there's just like this like conglomeration of like artists that like when you love people and you love working with them, they're just like, yes. So she, even though she is designing for like Amazon and all these, she's like, I'll find the time. And so she's hilarious. So she understood what I was trying to do, which is like that like cacophonous thing in silence, you know, where you are surrounded by birds and like all these other sounds. And she actually researched, she's so obsessive. She actually researched the kinds of bird sounds that would be where my house is. Like she
Amazing.
like, so every bird sound that's in there is Southern California and like specific to like where I'm living. Cause she was like, where is it? And she's like, she's so appreciative of like soundscapes that she like whenever there's a bird sound in there, it's not, you know, it's not willy-nilly. It's like literally she filled it in with like this cacophonous bird sounds, but like because they're like native to LA.
Amazing. And then like with things like the repetition of the record, like kind of setting up the sort of contagious thing, like was that, I mean, it's almost it's hard to describe in words like exactly what that does, but could you talk like a little bit more about some of those other choices with the music and how you found that rhythm of the sound designs of like what comes in and comes out? I know that's
Sure.
a general question about something specific, but
I'm going to talk about it while I move through my backyard. See, backyard, my set. But I you know, the like, I mean, there's the trope of obviously we all get indulgent and we listen to the same song over and over as if it's going to solve something, right? But also that specific song is a requiem, you know, and it's about death. Like it's about writing about death and confronting death. And there's something so unbelievably overwhelming about the idea of death that you have to laugh at it, you know, as I am right now. But like, you know, it's just, you have to be, it's so overwhelming that you have to ignore it, you know? You like the cruelest joke is that you're born and you're conscious and you're born to formulate words to express yourself, and they're met with sort of contradictions all the time. And then the grandest joke on you is that you die. And so like playing that over and over is like trying to sort of face it, but also like understanding it's never going to like quite get there, you know? Like that's the cruelest joke of like expression, is that we can be, even with the movie, is like you can try to get there, but you can't, you know?
Did you play music on set at all to set the mood? Or, I mean, I'm sure that all the music was in post, so how did you create that sort of mood on set? Or were they just kind of having an understanding that's where it was going to go?
Yeah, sorry. Here's my evening time quarantine nap time alarm. I just have to turn it off real quick.
No problem.
This is how I set my days, where I'm like, it's okay to fall asleep and then wake up at 7. Yeah, I mean, I did for Kate, definitely, like, especially with like with the Requiem, and then also Mondo Boys, Mike and Mike, I sent them early footage of the movie, and they're so quick. They sent me passages of soundtrack passes that I was like, oh, this is like inspiring. And so certain walks through the house, like my house, that Kate did, I actually played that to like give a temp for her. And their scores ended up being in the movie because it was just so, I matched it literally to the way that Kate was walking and like
Okay. And so I want to talk a little bit about the costume choices. Having Jane in her pajamas, did that just come out organically? How did that work?
I mean, I scripted that she was in her pajamas, but then Jane was very particular about the pajamas that she wore.
Okay, good to know.
Which it was a whole battle, but I loved the battle because it became so iconic in this way. You know what I mean? Like I love how like my friends were, at first it was like it was annoying to me, admittedly, where I'm like, Jane, just put on a fucking pair of pajamas. But she was like, no, and they have to be particular and they have to look like this. And she was like so right, like, so I have to give her that credit because again, we don't have a costume designer. We didn't have a costume designer. It was just like me. And by the way, Kate is in all of my clothing. Like there's no.
So she truly is Amy.
Yeah, like the sparkly dress she's wearing, I wore to the Emmys. It's like, it's sort of like this, like I want this moment to feel, like when I went to the Emmys, I was like, I want this to feel so amazing, but like it never does when you're in it, whenever you're in the moment where I'm supposed to be like awarded for being here, because it was when Zazie was nominated for my episodes, and it's like I should feel a part of this, and I just like don't, and I'm in this pretty dress, and like what is this artifice like everywhere, and so but like so I like put Kate into that, to my Emmys dress, because I was like, for fuck's sake, not only like does it like emulate the surrealness of like my experience, but also I'm gonna get the worth out of this.
That's such a perfect idea. All of those clothes are worn once, and you made a film out of it, and a film that captured your anxiety at the actual event. That's amazing. And Alienation. And that was for your nominations for Atlanta, just to let people, just to clarify that for people. I think I'm going to start opening it up to questions from the audience. I do have one more question. So if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A box and I will get to it. I know that you use your house for the film, and I wonder, like, sometimes I've looked at like Sofia Coppola's films, for instance, like she's very interested in spaces and how spaces are almost like haunted, like there's like the past lives there. And I wonder if there's some kind of anxiety over home ownership or something that was there before you and will be there after you that led to some of the anxiety of this film. I don't know, because I'm not a homeowner, so you'll have to answer me if there's anything about home ownership that led to this.
That's
film.
funny that you say that, because I, as you know, Miriam, I lived out of a suitcase for like a decade or more. And then this was the first home, and then I went straight from being sort of, I would say, glamping version of vagabonding, from a suitcase into just suddenly owning a home, for after 10 years. And so there was like this really, I knew how to be a filmmaker better than I knew how to be a homeowner. And so like when I got here, I was like, what do I do with you? It's almost like having like a, like a person like thrown onto you, and you're like, what do I do with you? And I was like, what do I do with you? And like, because I knew filmmaking, I was like, we make a movie with you. And and then I started making the movie, And it's really strange, like through the process, even though the movie's so creepy and weird, it was like my sort of exploration of my house, of like learning how to connect with it. And now I feel like I love it as much as it loves me, in this very weird way, that I don't know how to put into words, other than one time I was away shooting this thing, and the alarm system was going haywire and sending me alerts. And then when I got home, it just stopped. Like I had like specialists come out when I was away. I was like, can you make sure my alarm system's okay? And they're like, there's nothing wrong. And then I came home. It's like Christine the Car, like a Stephen King novel. And then I came home and the house was like, okay, good. You're like,
it
we're
missed
good.
you.
Yeah.
That's so funny. That's good. Well, you're creating your own energy and possibly ghosts for next generations and these sort of things. So I'm going to start asking, going to questions. So Laura Jean Hawking wants to know, how has the pandemic changed how you think about the meaning of She Dies Tomorrow? Would the movie be different if you were making it today?
I don't, just as an honest, like being honest, is I don't know the experience of it not being, of it being seen outside the pandemic. And I made it outside of the pandemic, and it was definitely about anxiety and something else macro of like societal. But like, I have no idea what it would be like outside, just as a human being experiencing it myself and it being released. I have no idea what it would be like without that. But at the same time, you know, it's been really interesting because people's responses are really personal, as opposed to dissecting it in the way that I've experienced interviews or like conversations. It's been extremely personal, of like and responding specifically to like the isolation and the need to connect, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's another question. I see a hand up, and actually, George, if you could type your question in the Q&A box, that would be better. And I have another question here from Kenan on YouTube. You kind of answered this, but I'll ask it again because I think this might be from a filmmaker, and he's very curious. Once you found out what the movie would be, did you set out to find answers, fill in blanks, or did you continue filming and let the filming editing process answer your questions along the way?
There was a point where it was the filming was answering questions for me, more stylistically, less narratively, and then once we, like with my close collaborators, Kate and Jill and Jay Keitel, once that solidified, I had to take it. I edited it myself and found it, and then I was like, I know the answer. Like it was just like this weekend where I was like, it's an apocalypse. and everyone was like so excited because we were gonna make so much money, and I was like, no, it's like it's really way more contained than that. And like I was like, no, it's like really super small. But they all got that, because then I found like it was, and then once I realized the scope of it, I'm very terrible at media managing. So I found Kate Brokaw, the editor, and she's magnificent, and she really got it. And at first I was like, I'm going to be editing alongside with you. And she was like, cool. But she like really got it. And she would edit everything like alongside what we were shooting. But yeah, there was one weekend where I was just like, it's an apocalypse movie. And then I like wrote the whole thing. And that like after we shot like probably like 30 minutes of the movie, and Kate and Jay and everyone were ready for like this body count movie. And I was like, I know it's much more existential. And I was like, but it's inspired also by this Ray Bradbury story that I like read, and like, you know, but like, they're like, Ray Bradbury, great. And I was like, no, but it's like, they do nothing. They do nothing when they realize the apocalypse is coming. And everyone's like, Oh, but but they weren't like less enthused about it. It was just like it became exciting for them, like in a different way, if that makes sense.
It totally does. I was realizing, is there a certain freedom or really, whatever it means in the film? There seems to be I mean, it's more than death because it's like the end of life. It's not that you'll be gone, everything will be gone. Is there like, it seems like there's a certain freedom and relief, like without like, the taking off life support, the sort of like idea, without, I'm not in like, without trying to say that I'm not encouraging death in any way, but I'm saying, but I think there's a beautiful, not meaning it literally, a sort of relief that I see in that. Did you find that in exploration of the film, or in your thoughts?
Yeah.
Of it?
Well, not with me personally, but yes, with the idea of something. There's a difference between an idea, something, and then the feelings you have, right?
Yeah.
So the like you can release something intellectually, but the feelings you have still remain, right?
Right.
So you're constantly like, after something's done, you're like, even intellectually, if you've released something and you understand something's gone or somebody's gone or whatever is done, that like emotionally there's just sort of this storm underneath, and like, what do? It's like, even if you do that thing, like I mean, it was important for me to give that piece in the movie for Tunde, who plays Brian, who releases his dad, right? Because when I was taking care of my dad, so many people would say like, oh, well, it'll be great when he passes on. And you're like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, it's just like, well, what are you saying? Kill him right now? Like, I have to like care for him. I have to care for him. And they're like, well, it'll be great when he passes on. And you're like, great, but the day to day, like, so I just like kill him? Like, we don't live in a Kevorkian state, like we don't live in Oregon. Is it legal in Oregon? I think it is.
Might be.
Yeah. Euthanasia, I think is. But like it's like these things that you think about that are so dark, that actually my mother, like, we've had these gallows conversations, where after my father's death, who was her divorced husband, like, she's already said to me, she was like, if I get to that state, just like get rid of me. And I was like, no, but like, I can't legally do that. Like, put it in writing. Like, you're like, put it in writing. You have to say, pull the plug. And she was like, right, but before it even gets to that state, I want you to pull the plug. And I was like, I don't even think I can fucking do that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
But these are the conversations that like are real and that happen in families, and should happen in families,
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's interesting in the film. It's like an apocalypse, but then it changes the nature of all of the relationships. And it's, I mean, I don't, it's it I feel like it's also so interesting on like, beyond literal. But okay, I'm gonna go to another question. So George Curry says, I understand you've worked on multiple formats like 16 millimeter on Sun Don't Shine, 35 millimeter on Atlanta. I did not know that, actually. And digital. Is there a sort of shift in production tensions based on film format due to quantity, or is it all the same? Is there a distinctive difference that you particularly have noticed between filming on different formats outside of just the look and film quality?
There is definitely, but there's like strengths and weaknesses to both. Like with Sun Don't Shine, we shot on 16, and there definitely was, when you call action, it means like it better be good. Like there's an energy whether it's my direction or Jay, the cinematographer who's holding camera at that time, and the actors, it's like there's money running through the camera, and there is an energy to that with like that there is some level of spontaneity, but it's just like it's only in that moment. It gives a very linear sort of spontaneity to it. It's like only captured on film, you know. Whereas with digital, it's like, let's try that again, you know, which there's a beauty in that as well. But so I find both of them to bring an energy or a freedom in some way. Neither one is better. It's just they bring something else to the format. Wait, I can't hear you, Miriam.
Sorry, I was muted. Let me tell you that Connor wants to ask, what inspired the style of art Jane creates in the film?
I mean, I wanted to be able to acknowledge the inside of the body and the universe and all of these things, but I also wanted her to approach it in a curious way as opposed to an expert way, because a conversation that I had with one of my dearest friends who's a radiologist, that was the most illuminating thing, because I wanted to be a doctor when I was younger. And my friend that's a radiologist now, I asked her one night at a bachelorette party, I was like, do you ever like look at the scans and like not know what the fuck is in the body, like what you're looking at? And she was like, oh my God, like every day. But she's like, but you go through the process of elimination, you look at scans, like, you know, it's not necessarily her job as a radiologist to say specifically what it is. You have to get like kind of close to it, and then you send it to like specialists. But like to hear that from a trained doctor was like such a refreshing and scary idea, you know, that like the body, as John Mayer put it, the body is a wonderland. That the exploration of like that your body is so mysterious and in this way, especially the female body, but the universe and everything that we like, that there's so many things to discover within the body. I mean, that sounds so high, but like, you know, whatever. I'll smoke a blunt and watch my movie. That's
that's a full quote. So there's a question from Victoria who wants to ask, and this is interesting because you said you made this like 2 years ago. So obviously that's before COVID, but that's post-Trump. And she wants to know, you said that that it's societal, this anxiety, but is it also political? My immediate thought that the contagious anxiety related to the news cycle and politics.
Definitely. I mean, I'm blaming myself as well. Like I'm an addict of news, and leading up to the news cycle, and then even now is like, you know, leading up to 2016, it was like, who's gonna stop him, or or like, is this real? Like, is this you know, there was a point where we didn't know that he was going to be our president, you know, like it was wild. And so I couldn't stop, like, I'm part of the problem. And I couldn't stop watching it, because at first I thought it was funny, then it became not funny, then it became real, then it became, you know, and whether you're right or left, I think you should be like terrified of what happened to the political system, you know. It was just it's every day watching the news cycle. You can't put your finger on something. It's like for 3 days something will be contagious, and then they're on to the next topic, right? And they haven't even gotten to the root of like what the thing we're so angry about, you know, like we're on to the next thing, we're on to the next thing, we're on to the next thing. It's like it's so wild how and I love it and I hate it. You know what I mean? It's not I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it just is wild how infectious it is. But also I think it's a good thing and a bad thing. And you have to accept both of them at the same time, you know?
Yeah. I mean, especially online, you see it obviously, like, you know, watching the news and just even like a day like today announcing a big news item, you see the way reactions are very contagious in the way that kind of surrounds us. There's another question from Kenan who wants to ask, he says, do you ever experience moments of skepticism or lack of motivation for projects, and how do you overcome those?
Oh, like every day. Yeah, I mean that's what this whole film was born out of, you know. Was you know, I love the hope that I can be building. Like I haven't, like, by the way, I still like work with all these people that I hope they haven't fired me through these interviews, but I'm joking. They love that, like, yeah, that I create, but like I understand it takes a long time to develop, but at the same time they understand that like my anxiety of like I can't fucking deal with this, and so that's why they hired me in the first place. So there's sort of this, like, I think permission is a big thing to explore for artists, is like especially when you come up like with no money like I did, is like you feel so grateful when you get these opportunities, right? But you also understand that you're an artist, one, and you have these urges to do things, but you also feel like you're like looking for permission in some way. And then you suddenly realize, like, oh, right, I never asked for permission in the first place. And then you become relevant again to the people you're working for in this really weird way where they don't really want you to be that way, but you like become relevant by sort of being rebellious to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's encouraging. That's good. Do you find strength in that, then in that rebellion and that like anxiety?
It's scary. It's scary. I will say that it's scary. But here's the thing. I also don't like slack on like what I'm delivering. It's just like we have arguments about what I'm delivering. You know what I mean? It's like it's very subjective about like what I've delivered. And like you as an artist have to stay true to like, no, I delivered my fucking work. And now, you know what I mean? Like it's like, it's a very complicated argument because like, here's the thing, like I grew up poor, you know, like I'm not about to bite the hand that feeds me, but like now I'm just like, excuse me, I gave you what you got. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm starting to understand my own power in a way, you know?
That's awesome. I would, let's see, I'm going to ask another question that I think you asked. I mean, I think that you answered, but it gets a little bit more specific. So John wants to know, was the structure of the opening sequence, the close-up on Amy's tear and the shot of her in the doorway looking outside, was that scripted or was that found in editing? I think you kind of just talked about that, but that was very specific.
That was through shooting. I mean, it was realizing at a certain point where I wanted it to begin, because I like you constantly, like, at least for me, I'm always constantly looking for the most striking image to begin and end. And I didn't feel like I had reached that yet with the idea. But while I was shooting, I found that with like, oh, like as the relationship started to like assemble, and I was like, yeah, this part of her life that nobody really addresses for her is sort of the opening and ending of the story.
Okay, really great. Let's see. I think we have time for about one more question. Let me see. Let's see. There is a question. Oh, this is not a question, but it's a comment, and it's just a comment from Catherine, who said that she saw Sun Don't Shine in St. Louis, which encouraged her to make her first feature. So, so that's great. And I think that that's all we have time for, but I want to thank you so much, Amy, for joining us and for making the film that made me excited about movies again in this strange emotional time. You hit on, I think, just the right wavelength for so many of us. So thank you.
Of course. That's all I'm trying to do. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
I love you,
Thanks,
Miriam.
everyone.
Okay.
Love you too, Amy. Bye.
All right. Bye.